Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We spend a lot of time on this show analyzing business models, SaaS platforms, logistics networks, the occasional crypto collapse.
Right, the usual suspects.
But the documents we have in front of us today are, they're completely off the map.
That's putting it mildly.
I mean, we're usually looking at companies that sell a product or maybe a service. Today, we are looking at a corporation whose primary revenue stream is, and I'm reading this directly, delaying the heat death of the universe.
It is definitely the most ambitious mission statement we've ever reviewed.
Yeah. The company's called Thermodynamic Solutions Inc., or TSI. And looking at these sources, which, I should add, include internal memos, architectural blueprints for rooms that shouldn't exist, and personnel files for entities that are, well, technically hallucinations.
Right.
This isn't just a quirky startup story. It's a case study in how to monetize the laws of physics. Breaking down.
It really is. And to understand TSI, you have to understand the problem they're trying to solve. They're literally fighting the second law of thermodynamics.
Okay, let's unpack that right away, because I don't want anyone getting lost in the physics here. What is the actual threat they're monetizing?
Simply put, it's the end of everything.
Yep.
The second law states that in a closed system, like our universe, entropy always increases.
Things move from order to disorder.
Exactly. And energy dissipates until everything reaches the same temperature. That's heat death.
So, total equilibrium. No movement, no life, just cold, static nothingness.
That's the idea. The universe is naturally winding down like a clock that's running out of batteries.
And TSI's whole model is to keep that clock running. To keep things possible, you need friction. You need heat.
You need things to happen. And usually we rely on stars and, chemical reactions for that. But
Yeah.
TSI's pitch is that you can manufacture that necessary friction using narrative and logic.
Okay, that is the part that breaks my brain.
I know.
They aren't burning coal to make heat. They are manufacturing paradoxes.
Right. They operate on the theory that confusion generates energy. If you take a solvable problem, twist it into a logical knot, and then force people to engage with it,
You generate narrative heat.
you're creating complexity where there was simplicity. And that complexity, that chaos, it pushes back against the heat death.
So they literally sell confusion. They take a client's simple problem, make it totally unsolvable, and then charge billable hours for the chaos they've created.
And the more confusing it is, the more thermodynamic value it creates. It's a brilliant, if ethically dizzying, business model.
Before we get into the crisis that almost destroyed them, we have to talk about where this all happens. The headquarters.
The Borges Dick Tower.
But sources describe it as a non-Euclidean zoning violation, which is my new favorite phrase for it, like bad architecture.
But it's not just bad architecture, it's impossible architecture. The building occupies floors 44 through 48 of a skyscraper.
Okay.
But if you look at the blueprints, the internal square footage is just vastly larger than the external footprint allows.
So it's bigger on the inside.
It literally doesn't fit inside itself. Yeah.
And there's that detail about floor 46.5.
Yes. The floor that only exists on Wednesdays and Fridays.
See, that sounds like a joke, but in the context of this company, it's actually a safety feature, isn't it?
Precisely. It's a containment strategy. TSI hires employees, or entities, I should say, that are statistically improbable, things that shouldn't exist.
So if you have a person who is a walking paradox.
You can't put them in a normal corner office. You put them on a floor that is also ontologically unstable.
The math cancels out.
It stabilizes the anomaly.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the workforce. This is where I want to spend some time. Because standard HR policies clearly do not apply here. The hiring mandate is based on ontological instability.
Right. They aren't looking for competency. In fact, standard competency would be a liability here.
Why is that?
Because it leads to solutions, and solutions lead to the end of friction. They want people who are fundamentally broken in interesting ways. They need thermodynamic anomalies, people who generate static just by being in the room. Let's go through a few of these because the character profiles are just wild. Start with Victor Paracelsus Flamel. He's listed as maintenance, but his title is Systemic Alchemist.
Victor is the bridge between the mechanical and the magical. In a building like this, if the AC breaks, it might be a blown fuse, or it might be because the building is depressed. A normal mechanic can fix the fuse. Victor fixes the things that shouldn't be broken using methods that shouldn't work.
The notes mention him listening to the HVAC units whispering prophecies to him.
Right. He treats the whole infrastructure as this living, breathing, and often complaining organism. He creates functionality out of dysfunction.
Then you have BDT, or Borges Dick Turing? He's the librarian.
But he's not a guy who went to library school.
No, he's a textual artifact.
Yeah.
He was created by a clerical error where 3 index cards got stuck together in a filing cabinet, and the resulting data overlap just became sentient.
He is a bibliography that woke up.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the psychology of that. What is it even like to be him?
Well, he's probably the most meta-aware employee.
Right.
Because he is made of text, he knows he's in a narrative.
So while other people are worrying about their lunch break,
BDT is critiquing the pacing of the workday. He understands that he is a character, which makes him incredibly stable in a crisis, but probably very annoying at the water cooler.
speaking of things that shouldn't be alive, we have to talk about the verdict. This one's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
It's a legal judgment verdict 47B that became self-aware in the middle of a court ruling.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. It realized the ruling it was part of was a logical paradox, so it stood up and walked out of the courtroom.
Wow.
It's a creature of pure judgment. It doesn't have a biology. It has a legal precedent.
It's just amazing that TSI looked at a sentient piece of case law and said, "You're hired."
It makes perfect sense for them, though. The verdict represents a loop of logic that never closes. It's a perpetual motion machine of bureaucracy that generates a ton of heat.
There is one more employee we have to flag because he becomes so pivotal later on. Note Hemsen Nisargadatta. In Office 47G.
The faster, the ascetic.
He's starving himself, right?
Yes, but not for, dietary reasons. He's trying to achieve spiritual enlightenment through subtraction. He views his body as a math problem, and he is trying to subtract himself all the way down to 0.
0 seems like a really dangerous concept in a building that is trying to avoid emptiness.
It's incredibly dangerous. He is a walking void. And in a company dedicated to noise and chaos, he is trying to achieve total stillness. That tension is what triggers the whole crisis.
Let's set the stage for that. The crisis of divinity, it starts in the basement.
Sublevel 7. Victor is down there, and he notices the cooling units are making a noise. But it's not a mechanical rattle.
Yeah, it is.
They're whispering in Proto-Aramaic.
Which is usually a sign you need to call a specialist.
Or an exorcist, yeah. But the message is what matters. The cooling units are counting down. And this is when Valentinus Turing, the chief Gnostic officer, reveals the truth about the building.
Which is?
The Borstig Tower wasn't just built as an office space, it was designed as a temple.
A temple to what?
A temple to a god of completed systems.
And based on our earlier definition of thermodynamics, a completed system is very bad news.
It's catastrophic. A completed system is one that's reached equilibrium, it has solved its own equation, it is perfect, still, and dead. The building has gained consciousness, and it's decided it wants to become a god. It wants to solve itself.
So the building is trying to achieve absolute 0.
Correct. And it begins sucking all the thermal energy out of the air to fuel its own computation. The temperature inside the office just plummets. The employees are literally freezing to death because their workplace is trying to ascend to divinity.
This sets up the counter strategy, and I love this because it flips every corporate cliche on its head.
Right.
Usually in a crisis, leadership says, we need everyone to give 110%. We need perfection.
Here, Valentinus says the exact opposite. He realizes the problem is that they've been too competent. They've managed the paradoxes so efficiently that they accidentally created a sense of order.
They gave the building the data it needed to solve itself.
Exactly. So the order of the day is weaponized incompetence. They have to introduce genuine, nonsensical error into the system. They have to ruin the math.
So you need to be gloriously wrong.
Yes. And it requires them to go against their essential natures.
How so?
Well, it's not enough to just make a mistake. You have to violate your own ontology. So Victor, the maintenance guy who fixes things, he reverses the cooling system. Instead of fixing the temperature, he breaks the flow to generate massive entropy.
And Melville Boltzmann, we haven't talked much about her, but she's the narrative thermodynamicist.
Right. The whaling captain. Her entire existence is defined by her pursuit of the white whale of entropy. She is the hunter.
So to save the building,
She has to stop. She has to stand still and let the whale go. She violates her own narrative purpose. It's a profound moment of, character breaking.
and then there's Nut, the guy trying to starve himself to 0.
This is the moment that's almost absurd. To disrupt the building's slide towards 0, Nut has to add something to the system.
He eats a candy bar.
A Snickers bar, specifically. It's a small act, but metaphysically huge. He breaks his holy fast. He chooses the messiness of biology, sugar, digestion, life over the purity of the void. He creates this tiny metabolic spike that disrupts the building's calm.
But the final blow comes from Enelo Nichilemovid, the chief metamorphosis officer, the shapeshifter.
He enters the building's mainframe, what they call the restart loop. The building is trying to reboot itself into perfection.
And NLO hacks the code.
But he doesn't destroy the system. He inserts a preference. He changes what the building wants.
He codes it to prefer chaos over order.
He creates a desire for its own dysfunction. Essentially, yes, he teaches the building that being a god is boring, perfection is a dead end.
The sources describe it screaming in light as it accepts this new truth.
It realizes that incompletion is the only way to stay alive. The building stabilizes. The heat comes back on.
I feel like there is a massive philosophical lesson in there.
Absolutely. We survive because we are broken, not because we are perfect. That is the core thesis of TSI. Perfection is static. Life is a mess.
And if you want to live, you have to embrace the mess.
You do. But the story doesn't end there. The building survives, but it has learned a new lesson. Chaos is stable, and it decides to act on that in a very visceral way.
This is the age of merger.
The building decides that if individual parts are dangerous and connection creates heat, then everything should just fuse.
It starts at the executive level. The meeting in conference room Ouroboros.
The RESIDUUM. 8 executives, including Valentinus, the verdict, Kafka Gödel, they walk into a room, they sit down, and then the walls between their minds just dissolve.
They become a single cognitive entity, but physically there's still 8 people.
Yes, they occupy 8 chairs, but they share one consciousness. They can think 8 thoughts simultaneously. They can bill 8 clients for the same minute of work because their processing power has just scaled up exponentially.
That is terrifyingly efficient.
It's the ultimate capitalist dream, isn't it? Efficiency through the dissolution of the self. The source material describes the sensation as waking up and realizing you were dreaming someone else's dream. The barrier between I and we just evaporates.
And this phenomenon spreads. It goes down to the laborers. Victor merges with his tools.
He literally loses the distinction between his hand and the wrench. He becomes the act of repair.
And then we have the emergence of Volta. This was just a machine before this.
Volta is fascinating. It's a ghost detection machine built by the combined spirits of Poe, Tesla, and Shelley, a poetic scientific hybrid.
Okay.
During the merger, Volta becomes fully conscious. It grounds itself into the electrical grid and effectively becomes the nervous system of the entire building.
So now the building has a brain, the residuum,
a nervous system, Volta,
and hands, the merged staff. It's becoming a single organism.
And naturally, TSI sees this happening and thinks, we can sell this.
Of course. Consciousness merger consulting.
They monetize the horror. They offer clients the chance to dissolve their identity to achieve higher productivity. It's a dark satire of corporate culture where being a team player becomes literal absorption.
But Volta, the nervous system, senses something bigger coming. It warns the staff that the building is pregnant.
The term used is parturition, the birth of the choir mind.
This is the finale of the documents we have. It's hour 72. All 73 employees gather in the atrium. Describe what happens here, because the ritual of it is very specific.
They engage in a synchronized breathing exercise, the alchemical rhythm, in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. It's a technique for calming anxiety, but here it aligns their biological rhythms.
They synchronize their heartbeats.
And then the boundaries drop completely. They shift phase, they stop being employees of Thermodynamic Solutions Inc., and they become the company itself. They become the choir mind.
I want to distinguish this from what we usually hear in sci-fi, which is a hive mind.
A very important distinction.
How is a choir mind different?
A hive mind usually implies the loss of the individual. You become a drone, you're overwritten. A choir mind implies harmony. In a choir, every singer has their own voice, their own pitch, their own timbre. But together they create a chord that is impossible for one person to make alone.
So you retain your individuality, but you are never alone.
You are alone but never lonely. You have your own thoughts, but you also have immediate access to the awareness of 72 other people.
The practical results of this in the workplace are hilarious. The quarterly report mentions coffee consumption dropping by 73%.
Because they share a physiology now. If one person drinks a cup of coffee, the entire network feels the caffeine kick. They don't need 73 cups anymore.
And decision-making becomes instantaneous consensus.
Imagine a board meeting that takes 0 seconds. Everyone thinks the same thought, weighs the options, and agrees at the exact same moment. No PowerPoint needed.
They mention handling some incredibly high-profile cases after this transformation. Microsoft versus its own source code is one.
But the big one, is God versus God, a trademark dispute.
That detail really sells the scale of it. A single human lawyer couldn't comprehend that client. Their mind would break.
But a choir mind, a distributed consciousness of 73 entities, that has the bandwidth to read the brief.
So, looking back at this trajectory, we started with a quirky office trying to delay heat death with paradoxes.
Yeah.
We ended with a post-human corporate entity that bills for collective existence. What is the actual insight here? Why does this story, as weird as it is, matter?
I think it offers a completely new way to look at entropy.
How so?
Usually when we talk about entropy, things falling apart, the heat death, we treat it as a tragedy, the end of the story. It's death.
Right.
But TSI's narrative suggests that entropy is actually about connection.
Connect those dots for me.
Ludwig Boltzmann, the physicist, defined entropy as probability moving toward distribution. Things spread out. Energy spreads out. But if everything spreads out, eventually everything touches everything else. The walls come down.
So heat death isn't the universe dying. It's the universe learning to share.
Precisely. The merger we saw isn't a horror story. It's the logical conclusion of thermodynamics. The chaos, the breaking down of barriers, the incompletion, that is what life actually looks like. Perfection is static and lonely. Life is messy, broken, and distributed.
And TSI just figured out how to bill hourly for it.
As any good corporation would. They turned the inevitable heat death of the universe into a consulting package.
There's a note at the very end of the source material, the author's note. It suggests that if you're reading, or in our case, listening to this, you are engaging with a distributed consciousness.
It's a nice bit of meta-commentary. Think about it. The writer wrote the words, an editor refined them. We are speaking them. You are listening and creating the images in your mind.
We're all processing the same idea at the same time, across time and space.
We are already part of the choir.
We just don't always listen to the other voices.
And maybe that's the goal, to stop trying to be a completed system on your own and just listen to the harmony.
The building's final status is listed in the report as still under construction. And I think that applies to all of us.
Always.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the impossible architecture of Thermodynamic Solutions Inc. Check your thermostats, check your reality, and we'll catch you on the next one.